Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to create the Fungal map from Among Us. It's been a long time since I've made these Among Us maps, maybe even 2 years. But this one starts out the same as the others. We use a paper printout of the entire map, and this is what we'll use as a template. And the best way to fill up the mass of a map is to use some junk clay. This is all really old, crusty clay that cannot be used anymore because it's just so hard. And making it soft enough to use is just a nightmare. It's been something like a year or two since the airship map came out, and you guys are still commenting asking me to make it, so I promise, in the next month or so, you will also see a video of the airship map. Now, I didn't think of actually cutting the map size that I need, I just used the entire rectangle of the paper, so we need to cut this down, and we can save these extra chunks for maybe filling in another project? I'll just throw them in there and maybe they'll get used at some point. We have the base of our map done, so let's add in some sand. And I want to talk to you about the hidden crewmates. There's 11 in this video. See if you can find all of them and leave a comment saying which order they appeared in. The first one to correctly comment this will get their comment pinned and you can show off to the world your extraordinary achievement. Marking out the shape of all of the rooms is going to be a very essential step for what we're doing next, creating all of the walls. This is always a step that I kind of don't look forward to in the maps. It's probably my least favorite thing to do. After baking, you can see these are very flexible, which is great for what we're doing next. Actually, it's completely irrelevant to what we're doing next because we just have to cut these into a bunch of tiny pieces. I just really wanted to show off the flexibility. You can see why I marked off all of the rooms. It makes it so much easier to get all of the walls in the correct positions. Now we have the main beach area done, so we need to move on to the jungle. This area looks amazing. It's just covered in all kinds of crazy mushrooms and plants. Polis has always been my favorite of the maps, but I think this one might take the new spot. I really like the idea of a giant outdoor map, and that's exactly what Polis was, but this one is a little bit more special because they've crash landed here and kind of made their own colony. And you can see a lot of these aspects as we continue building. They kind of use and repurpose a lot of things that got destroyed from their ship. Now in the back is a giant mountain, and as much as I dread working with foil, it's definitely necessary here because this would be a ton of clay. There's no specific reason why I'm using red, it's just a very soft clay and it's really easy to work with. This is the perfect example of why I do not like foil, it's just so lumpy. After 3 coatings and bakes, I think it looks pretty decent, so we can move on to creating the 2 hills. We have a small hill and a big hill. These, however, are not going to be created with foil, we're just going to use a massive chunk of clay. And the mountain, of course, is not red, so let's cover it all in some brown. I use a pasta machine to get these perfectly flat sheets, and it is a lifesaver. Without using it, everything ends up being much more lumpy. Our mountain is secured to the map, but it looks very boring and empty, so let's add in some grass. This is a much darker shade of green than I usually use, but I think it's very fitting to the map. Creating this map is kind of all over the place. There's so many details and it's hard to focus on which one to create first. I start going on one thing like creating all of the walls, and then I get distracted making a mountain, and then I decide I want to create some wooden fences. So it's a little bit chaotic, but trust me, this process works. I threw these walls into the oven, and since the map is still soft, we can just push it right into place. Now that should be every fence in this map. So let's work on the dropship. You might recognize this as the waiting room when you're waiting for the matches to start, but it's seen better days. It crashed on top of some giant purple spikes in the ocean, and caused a pretty considerable amount of damage. These are going to be the rockets that propel the dropship. I also remember creating these when I made the Mira HQ map, because you can see the entire dropship there. Except it's an outside perspective, and this you can actually see the inside. Over here, I'm not quite sure if this has a name, but we just have some little random spiky things here. This is the lookout area, and we also have some more spikes there. I think this is maybe some type of spiky vines. It also minorly looks like a rib cage of a giant animal. A prime example of I get distracted easily and start working on a new detail is we just made a floor pattern and now we're making some giant crystals. So let's go put those on the map and then we can move on to creating some mushrooms. We need a lot of mushrooms. I've made a lot of trees on maps before, but this is the most repetitive thing I've mass produced for a clay video. It took me a good hour to make all of these mushrooms. And that's just this kind. We also have some other mushrooms like these white puffs and, well, these aren't mushrooms, but there's some Venus flytraps. At least that's what it looks like to me. Some type of man-eating plant. These are actually something that I decided to add in. It's not actually on the map, but it just looked a little bit empty with only the mushrooms, and I guess I saw it as some type of puff shroom. So now I think all of the basic map details are done, so we can start working on the individual furniture and items in all of the rooms. First is the reactor, and this is a pretty complicated little thing to create. There's just kind of a lot of buttons and wires and things. I don't really know what's going on, but I just followed the picture. The lookout is probably the least detailed of any of the rooms. We literally just have binoculars. Although I guess if you consider the dropship to be a room, this is also very minimally detailed. While the dock is not necessarily its own room, it's more of an extension of a different room. I like to consider it to be its own room. It's kind of the only place you could go to relax on this deadly mushroom island. Personally, I don't fish, but I like looking at the water. So yeah, I don't know what happened. I transferred all the clips to my computer, I was ready to go editing, and then I looked and there was a bunch of them missing. So we're just gonna have to work with what we have. There's a lot of these things you did not see me create, but at least you get to see me place it onto the map. I think the single greatest addition to this entire map is this crewmate dinosaur floaty. It's just amazing. I really hope they make one in real life. My second favorite detail is definitely this campfire because it looks so cool. The fire honestly looks like a real roaring fire. I just lightly mixed together some orange, yellow, and red, and the result was incredible. I'm always conflicted when making mini storage units because there's just no way to create the actual details on them, so I kind of just make a bunch of random shapes and colors and stack them together, and somehow it turns out actually looking like a real shelf, full of real items. Let's glue the last few rooms into place. And normally there's a little hook in the storage area, but it didn't exactly work out with the height, so I'm gonna run this zip line to the top of the dropship instead. This is kind of the hang out lounge area. I guess you could relax here too, but I feel like it would smell like Cheetos and sweat. We have the beach area complete. So now, let's work on the jungle. These I saved for some of the last rooms because they're the most detailed. I'll be honest, I haven't played the new map much. I've actually only played it in free play, so I have no idea what this thing in the middle is, but it looks pretty cool. And we also have a very mysterious barrel of red junk that dumped all over the ground. Maybe it's just their supply of Kool-Aid. Just like the greenhouse on Mira HQ, It required some improvising. Plants are something that's really hard to create at a tiny scale, so I just do the best I can to match the designs and also make my own designs inside of those. Because who's really gonna know? After throwing that stuff into the oven, we can take some super glue and start getting everything into place. That's the lab complete, so now we need to finish up the greenhouse. And I have a special little surprise. Plastic. This plastic is going to work great for broken glass because I can't actually cut it into good pieces. So when I just try to cut out a nice little square, I get amazing little chunks of broken glass. And if you're curious, it's from a picture frame. Instead of the front having glass, they had this hard plastic, so I saved it, and it came in handy. This is another detail that's on a different map. This is on the Skeld map. The very first one that I created. The mining pits are pretty empty. We have a little golden nugget here. I think it's funny they took the time to mine to find gold when they're, trying to fight for survival. Here's a quick little stop motion of me creating the communications area. And then I found something really weird on top of the mountain. There's actually a Goron from Zelda. At least I think. It looks just like one. And above that, there's just some random junk, so let's create that. There's also a few ladders we need to create, and I don't know how big they need to be, so I'm gonna make one giant long ladder and cut it up after baking. Finally, let's add in some ladders, and I guess that is our final details. So here it is, the entire map of the Fungal from Among Us. This was a crazy one, and I'm gonna have another crazy one, the airship, coming next month. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.